Hi, I'm Karen Burniston, here to show a fun technique for turning the Stampin' Up! Poppin' Cuts card base into a flying easel card. I'm going to start my card by taking a 4 3/4 by 12-inch strip of the natural composition paper with the music notes theme, and then I'll use some extended cutting pads and roll that through the Big Shot using the Poppin' Cuts card base die. The natural composition paper is a resist paper. It has some glossy items on it, in this case some music notes, and all I'm doing here is taking some inexpensive white acrylic paint with a foam brush and just covering the music notes side of the paper. And then all I have to do to reveal those music notes is just take a paper towel and wipe off the paint before it dries. And so what it'll do is it'll remove that white paint that's on top of all those music notes, and then it'll allow them to shine through. After that is dried, or you can use a heat gun to dry it, then you're going to score the card at 5½ inches, which is in the center of the card. And then what I want to do is I want to measure off that fold 2 3/4 and draw a pencil line. I'm not going to score all the way across that line, just a little bit at the top and a little bit at the bottom, maybe about 1/4 inch. That pencil line will be what I use to line up my deco label framelit. So I'm going to put this on the magnetic platform, or you could use your flippy tab with all the tabs closed. And then I'll add a cutting pad, then my card, and then now I'm going to use the second largest deco label framelit, and I want the little points to be right on that pencil line and then just have it centered. Then I'll use a cutting pad, but that cutting pad is only going to come up to the center of the deco label framelit. So that pencil line is going to be very important for this whole technique. Now I'll roll that through the machine, just making sure that I'm keeping that cutting pad so that it's just right there on that pencil line. And then because the cutting pad didn't go all the way through, what it's going to do, it's only going to cut half the framelit. So you'll see there that framelit will stop right when it gets up to the pencil line. Okay, there's nothing tricky about this next step. I'm just going to put the card back onto the magnetic platform again with my cutting pad, and then I'll go down one framelit. So I'm going to go down to the third largest framelit now and cut that in the usual fashion. So I've just basically lined that up on the pencil line as well, but this time there's nothing tricky to it. I'm just actually cutting the entire framelit out so it will become a window in my finished card. And I'll keep that framelit. I'll use it for my title block later. And now you can kind of see how this is going to work. It'll fold over. There's your little easel. I was a little sloppy with my paint, and so I realized I was going to have to cover the inside of the card. So I'm going to go back to my Poppin' Cuts base die again and use some chocolate chip cardstock just on the half that will fit the interior of my card. So then that'll give me those little tuck slots that I'll need to line up. And before I glue that inside the card, I think I'll just use the music notes wheel with some chocolate chip ink, and I'll just add a little bit of music notes to that piece. Then I can just use some snail adhesive and glue that inside the card. I'll just have to make sure that my little tuck slots line up. If I need to use a knife, I can. In this case, I did a pretty good job of lining them up so that they still work. So that's a fun easel card, and now it's time to add the flying part. I chose one of the other natural composition papers and did that same white paint treatment to it. And this time I did a second step, which is once the paint had dried, I went ahead and sponged some crushed curry ink all over both sides, just to tint the piece yellow. And now I'm going to run that through with my Embosslets die. And what that Embosslets does is it cuts several little butterflies, and it actually embosses a pattern onto them at the same time. So it's a really fun die. And then I need to do this twice because I need 2 sets of the butterflies to make the little flying butterfly for my card. So that I can nest those 2 big butterflies together, I will have to do just a little bit of alterations to them. And this will require a craft knife and a cutting mat. And what I've done is I'm going to put a little diagram on the side here to show you what I'm doing. I'm starting with the top butterfly, which is butterfly number 1, and all I'm doing is adding a little box slot in the middle. So I'm not doing any measuring, I'm just kind of cutting a little slot into it. And then I'm going to switch to butterfly number 2, so now I'm working on the one on the bottom picture, and I'm just going to add some little notches top and bottom. Now, I didn't bother measuring this or using the first one as a template, and I probably should have because I can see already that my notches are not tall enough. So if I put the first butterfly over the second butterfly and I take a pencil and mark through that slot, then I'll quickly be able to see that those notches need to reach those pencil lines. So I'll have to go in there and lengthen them now with my craft knife. The concept of notches and slots is a pretty simple one. The notched piece goes through the slotted piece. But in the case of these butterflies, these wings are really large, so it's really not practical for me to be able to kind of fold down the wings and jam the one butterfly through the slot on the other one. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to make a little access tab. So I'm going back to my first butterfly, that's the top one in the picture, and I'm just going to make a little access tab with my craft knife. So I can see I didn't cut through enough, so let me try that again. Just 3 little cuts to basically make an access tab. What that tab does is when it lifts up, it gives me access to the slot. So now I can slide my notched butterfly under the tab into the slot and then get that tab through the notch on the bottom and back into place again. There are various ways that you could hang these butterflies, but my idea was to take some fishing line with a crimp bead on it. So I just went to the craft store and got some crimp beads, and then I slid that crimp bead down over both ends of the fishing line to make a loop. And then I'm going to get that loop around my butterfly and then slide that crimp bead down. I don't want it too tight because I still want that butterfly to be able to open. But I'm just going to slide the crimp bead down, and then you'll need a little pair of needle nose pliers, some kind of pliers that you can crimp that bead. And then once you get it into a position you like, you just squish it. And it will just now hold that fishing line around those butterflies. But it's loose enough that they can still open. Now I can go ahead and add that fishing line, that flying butterfly, to my card. And I just want to make sure that my butterfly is kind of centered in the opening when I do it. And I use some washi tape to tape that fishing line down to my outer frame. And then I'll even fold the fishing line over again and then tape it down again. And this does not have to be a pretty process because I am going to cover this frame with a die cut frame in just a second here. But right now I'm just basically trying to get the fishing line on. And there's various ways you could do that. Maybe you're going to tie it on. You could use sticky strip. It doesn't really matter. You can trim off any extra fishing line ends that are sticking out. And then now you've got the flying butterfly. Now I'm going to go back to those framelets again, and I'll nest 2 of them together, the number 2 and number 3 out of the framelit set. And then I'll run that through the Big Shot to cut myself a frame for the front of the card. And then before I glue that on, I can even take a stamp. I'm using one from the Hello Lovely set and just add a little decoration to that frame. It doesn't really matter what adhesive I use, I just need something that's easy to get that onto the front of the card. I'm going to go with the smallest framelit to make another little label, and then I've already added some dimensionals to the back of that label. So this little label is going to perform a couple little jobs. Number 1 is when the card is closed, it's going to provide a nice little backdrop for that butterfly. So I'm just going to lift the butterfly up, make sure that that label is centered in the opening, and then press it down. So it's actually going inside the card, but I'm making sure that it lines up when the card is closed. Then when I lift the easel up, that becomes the little stopper. Let me just walk you through the rest of the decoration since they're pretty easy. I tied some ribbon around the upper part of the card. I added some washi tape right across that label that I just put down. And I stamped the You Make Me Happy on my leftover music notes label and trimmed it down. And then a couple butterflies that were already cut with the embosslets, and my card is done. If you have enjoyed this tutorial, I hope that you will subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you can always find more pop-up ideas on my blog, KarenBurniston.com. Thanks for watching.